You're listening to Finding Your Genius Zone with Dirk Nevelle. With the help of successful individuals across industries, Dirk breaks down the unknown parts of every vocation while highlighting the importance of finding a career where you can leverage your natural skills, passions, and interests. Now here's your host, Dirk Nevelle.
Everybody, this is Dirk Nevelle. Welcome to my podcast. On with me today is my cousin who I love, Glenn Nevelle. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you.
So Glenn is a police officer, retired not long ago. And, you know, our family was really tight. Glenn's father and my dad were brothers. There was 4 brothers and 2 sisters. But Glenn was one of the guys I always look forward to on the family reunions. We had a lot of fun. I won't get into the stuff we used to do, but he is my first police officer that I've had on. So I'm kind of excited to get deeper into the life behind that career. Glenn, what I'll do is I'll just let you kind of talk about what you did. I'll ask the questions, but kind of get into like how you got into it, how long you've been doing it, where you did it, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
All right. So I'm pretty much out of high school, went to go be in the Marine Corps, and through the course of my physical, they realized I had a heart murmur. So it took a year to get a waiver from Washington. By the time that was concluded, I decided, what do I want to do with my life? And it was one of those that I didn't know if I was going to follow after my dad's footsteps. You know, I was a cop for 27 years. And after that, I was like, yeah. So I ended up for 3 years, worked full-time as a mechanic, rebuilding semi-transmissions, and went to night school for 3 years until I graduated with my associate's degree. And right out of 90, I started working immediately at a small town police department down in Southwest Michigan. Then in 92, I transferred up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, worked for the Kent County Sheriff's Department, where the course of my 25 years there, I worked in corrections, narcotics, road patrol, and community policing until hit my 25-year mark, and we're eligible. We weren't age restrictive on our pensions, so it's one of the allures of getting into law enforcement is that you are able typically to retire at a younger age than most people.
Yeah, and now all you do is just travel the world like a rock star. I see. Okay, so let me, I know you and I are close to age, and it may have changed, but rewinding it. So you were in high school in Kalamazoo, and then, your dad was the sheriff of Kalamazoo. Was there pressure? Was he ever like, son, you should do what I did? Or was he like, I don't care what you do, whatever you want to do is fine? Or did you feel pressure to follow him?
No, he, by all means, he was like, go into do something else other than law enforcement where you can make some good money. You know, if you're looking at law enforcement, you're not going to be a rich person. You're going to make a decent living, but he encouraged to go do something else. But then the more I got into it, the more that's what my passion was. So, I mean, I give the example, I go in high school, I wasn't the smartest. Squeaked through, but in college I graduated on the dean's list, and people are sitting there, and it was just a topic that you enjoyed learning about. So you sucked in the knowledge and all that stuff, where people are calling me a brain, going, you got 100 on that test? And I'm thinking, man, this wasn't rocket science, but it was just something when you're passionate about it, you tend to absorb it and remember it there. So,
yeah, I think that's a good point, because, nothing against the Nevelle family, but I wasn't the smartest guy or the sharpest knife in the drawer. I was a hard worker. I figured out how to like outwit. And, but I will tell you, like, I worked pretty hard. School was stressful for me. I had to work my ass off to get good grades. And then I remember in between careers, I was in the technology. And then I thought I wanted to go work with kids as a psychologist. So I got into a doctorate program. It was 7 years. And the first 2.5 years or whatever, I was basically a 4.0 student. I ended up not going down that road. But it's interesting because if you're watching Glenn right now and listening, pay attention to like the reality of when you're like into what you're doing, like you have a natural interest around it. it really changes it for you. Like if you're faking a job and you don't like what you're doing, it's going to be an exhausting race to run. But, I like what you said, because you were into it and you did well in it. When you what is like the rule? How do you get into being a police officer nowadays? So do you have to have a college degree?
No, it used to be a minimum of an associate's degree typically. Well, through the course of these last, 5 years, law enforcement has declined. And I'll give the example, like when I applied back in the sheriff's department in 1990, I mean, they would have several thousand applicants for a handful of jobs. And nowadays, just because of the lack of interest and the negative publicity on law enforcement, we may be hiring 15 and we are struggling to get 15, 20 applicants for the job. So now what a lot of agencies are doing is seeking lateral transfers and saying, hey, you're unhappy here, come work for us. And if you have 6 years of experience, we'll start you off at top pay. So that's one of the things that they're doing now to create a little more interest in getting in law enforcement. So it's one of the few, like my side job, and like I said, and we'll get into some pensions of why it's more lucrative. Like my sheriff's department that I looked into, it's called a defined benefit pension. So defined benefit, it's not a 401 driven pension system. When I retire, I get X amount of money per month every single month. So it's not based off profits of the thing. So there are a number of agencies that have a defined benefit versus a defined contribution. So like contribution, like the part that it's not good is that you have a stock market crash 3 years before you retire. And here you thought you were going to retire at age 55. And now you're having to work until age 65 or 70. So it's one of the things that a defined benefit pension, people that are familiar with them, they love to come into work for agencies like that. So
yeah, we'll get into the compensation a little bit. I think it's really interesting to kind of, I tell my audience, anytime you're getting into a career, not exactly like understand what you're going to get paid, but also how you're going to get paid. Like, is it a commission job where you get paid every month, or is it a commission job where you build a book of business, like an annuity? The pension thing, though, I remember my dad was always freaked out as a pilot about losing his pension. But let's just, so rewind again, coming out of school, let's just say you have a young woman, she has a college degree, goes out in the work world, isn't happy. And now she's 26, 27, and she's like, I want to be a police officer. How quickly can that happen? Is it like a year, too long?
Now what they have is it's a 17-week police academy. So it's Monday through Friday. It's, probably 10-hour days. And in the course of the 17 weeks, it is school from, sunrise to sunset. And you cover everything in the 17 weeks. And like agencies like that, they just drool over people that we've had multiple that aren't happy in their career choice and that are 30 years old and decide they want to be a police officer, and they've got a good driving history, clean criminal history. And after 17 weeks, you're going to come into an agency and they'll pay you your hourly wage, benefits, all this for the entire 17 weeks. And then you come in, and depending on the agency's training process, like at our agency, it would probably be 3.5 months minimum of training with another officer. So you've got pretty much 4 phases, where phase 1, you'd come in and work with a training officer one-on-one, do that for a month. Then they go to number 2 for a month, number 3 for a month. And then that person comes back for 2 weeks, a shadow phase with me, as they want to see how you've progressed through the course of those 3 months of training to make sure you're capable, because in law enforcement, nobody knows everything all the time. There's just so many unique things but you need to find a resource or a way to find those answers. And that's what they want you to have a true understanding of. So it probably from the time you start 17 weeks plus another 3.5 months, and then you could be out working on your own.
I wonder if you could actually get hired with your history if you were starting over.
Well, nowadays, yes. Maybe back in the day, they may take a second look at a few things from back in the day.
Oh boy, I don't know if I could get hired. So you had the advantage of growing up, seeing your dad, like knowing the lifestyle. So you had a familiarity with the career. Is there anything like, let's say 10, 15 years into the career, anything that surprised you? Like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. Didn't see it with my dad, good and bad. Like, what was something that like you learned that you really didn't like about the career? And is there something that you've kind of learned that you loved about it?
Yeah. And I turn around towards the, I just love it because it's not like factory work. You go into work, you don't predict, you have no idea what's going to happen. You can assume, but the allure of it is that no 2 days are the same. You go into work and start your shift. You can start off right out of the chute in a high-speed chase, domestic. And it's just one of those things that I loved about it is that you couldn't predict your schedule. And, working in a factory or, whatever, if that's your forte, it's this, but that I'm going to do this 300 times through the course of my shift. And that was something that, while I went to school, I was rebuilding semi-transmissions, and I'm like, it paid the bills and all that, but I knew at the end of the tunnel that I wasn't going to do that for the rest of my life. So it's just the uniqueness of it and you have so many different umbrellas in a bigger agency. You have narcotics, you have road patrol, community policing, the TAC team, mounted unit, dive teams. So, you're not just going to technically be a road patrol uniformed police officer your whole career. Detectives plain clothes, detective sergeant, you can work your way through the ranks. There's just an abundance of different opportunities. And I tell people in the course of my 27 years, I don't think there was ever a time where I was like, I have to go into work. It was, hey, I'm going in work, see ya. And it was just one of those things that, how nice is it when you go in and spend your career and it's not dreading the night before going into work because you hate your job. So it is one of those things that truly, that's one of the biggest things that I remember. And I retired, I was a school resource officer in the schools, and just the bonds you make. And I tell people the story. I'd bring my daughter to the football games. And when she played at University of Cincinnati, two of the kids that I knew were actually out there, and my daughter sent me a pic after the game that they were at her game because they knew that Cincinnati was playing at Arizona State. They met him, and it's just one of those, we still talk to these days, these kids and mentors. And like any profession, you've got some doorknob police officers that leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but the vast majority I, ever worked with are humble, decent people that are in it for the right reasons, but it's the couple percent that give all the good officers a bad name.
Yeah, no, I think that's similar in a lot of industries. What's interesting when you're talking, I'm thinking about all the different flavors. Like, so, there's different ways to do your job. And so it sounds like when you get involved, go through the the training and all of that, you get exposed to the different options that, the different, road patrol, you said, what was it? Underwater diving?
Yeah, you have dive teams, TAC teams, the tactical response team. And there's just division that we have people assigned to the FBI task force, the DEA task force, auto theft teams. So, and especially the bigger department you go to, the more opportunities there are. Granted, if you're going to a 6-person department, they're not going to have those opportunities. But, if some people enjoy the small town police rule that they know everybody, and and different people have different wants and needs. So some like the hustle bustle and working in the cities and, truly chasing bad guys, and some prefer the small town rural police officer. So
is it hard though? Like, do people get loyal? Like, I'm in a certain group and then I get bored or I want to try something different. Is that like, do people get pissed off when like, I can't believe you're going to that group, you're part of our group? Or is it just one of those things, people have the freedom to do whatever they want?
Yeah, totally the freedom. So, I mean, you'll turn around and some, when I was in the narcotics unit, there was a high demand for that because it's plain clothes, it's undercover work. And at times you'd work a lot of hours. I think we're talking back in 98, 99, and part of 2000, I was in narcotics. You got to figure I was making $30,000 a year in just overtime, working narcotics. So it was just one of those things where the work was fun because you're just truly chasing down, bag. We didn't care most about, Billy selling dime bags of weed. We were, going after suppliers and the bigger markets. So it was just a fun career.
So you're going after Cousin Vince.
I'm still calling in tips on them, but they haven't followed up on it evidently.
If Vince watches, hi Vince. Or maybe it was Cousin Pat. So what about the job? Like, it's not like you're being negative. Is there anything about the job that you're like, if I could just erase this, I hated this part of it? Is there something like,
you get these phone calls, and any time of the day, night, and police officers spend more time being counselors and, marriage and therapists than they do anything else. And we get called, time and time again and you have to go there. And if there wasn't an assault, try to rectify the situation to make both parties happy, maybe get one to leave, and it's just one of those things. So, there's time and time again where child custody exchanges that every single time they met, they had to have a police officer there because it just got so ugly. And it's just, like you said, with police, you end up spending, a lot of time in trying to resolve issues in relationships.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I remember in psychology, we do a lot of, I don't want to say role plays, but I realized how much, like, if I was working with a young kid who was being abused by his dad, I would go knock on the door and I knew I couldn't do that job. It was just like, with my temperament, I was like, I can't ignore this stuff. Right. And you're supposed to. So I would think that would be very hard because you have to kind of be, I don't want to say politically correct, but you can't punch a guy that's being abusive to his son. Just can't do that. It's an interesting thing. So how do you psychologically, like, how did you turn it off? Because, when I go to my job or my career, I'm helping people with real estate financing. Not very dangerous, not very scary. Good chance I'm coming home. What about, like, how often did that get in your head? Like, you're one bullet away maybe from not coming home. Did you ever think like that? Or did you just kind of like, how did you survive mentally in such a stressful career?
Yeah. Because I've been one of the rare that I enjoyed the unknown, the quick-witted, quick decisions, the quickness that I just enjoyed it, and it was one of those things. I was lucky enough that, I turn around and some people have struggled with that all of a sudden here 2 hours before you go home, you're at a fatal car crash where there's 4 dead bodies, including children lying there in the road, and you're policing it, and you come home and, got to mow the grass, take care of your dinner. And I was able to leave work at work and, and a lot of people struggle with that because like you said, I tell people all the time that live around here that you truly have no idea what goes on out here. You just see what's on the news. And I'm like, there are a lot of evil people out there that do some horrific, disgusting things. And I go, I love chasing down the bad guys. So, I mean, that was one of the things, especially the bad ones. I mean, there I went through a point where I think I totaled out about 5 cruisers and high-speed chases, because back in the day we could ram the pit maneuver and take them out and catch them. And it's just those are one reports that you never mind spending 2 hours doing a report, because everything you do has to be well documented, for potentially a criminal case years down the road. So I just, that part, I loved it, but like I said, some people struggle with it. That I know there's been police officers that, started, have gone places and saw the first, I think it was down in Kalamazoo. My dad was telling me a gal, like her first week out on her own, had a fatal car crash, and was a pedestrian car, but she ended up discovering the person's head embedded in the grill, decapitated the person, and quit law enforcement. So it's one of those things that people, you got to prep yourself, because you're the professional that everybody looks up to in a incident like that, to be calm, cool, collect, and hey, we need this, get this, got to look beyond that. It's a horrific thing. You got to get what needs to be done.
Yeah, I get it. I'm just kind of thinking about that, because I don't know how you measure that or identify one's ability to be able to handle that, like in a test. Like, you don't know till you know. Like, I would think that someone may think they're prepared to see that kind of stuff. I did a podcast with a firefighter, and he's like, I never was trained for the smells, and just like that, and like the smells. That's interesting. But like, that's an interesting one. So if you're thinking about being a police officer, do you have any advice on like how one would try to figure out if they're built for the stuff that you see that you don't really want to talk about at parties? Because I don't know how you do that.
And I think nowadays, a lot of these places will let you do, like, if, let's just say hypothetically, you decide you want to be a police officer right now, and there's probably plenty that would you clear an initial little background check, and then you could come do a handful of ride-alongs. You're not going to be carrying a gun, but you're just a civilian ride-along that you can kind of see firsthand, because, and it takes a person. I mean, you need to have deductive reasoning, common sense in a split-second decision. Otherwise, you see, the news here lately, the last number of years, that when you don't have it, it can be catastrophic for law enforcement. So, it's just a multitude of things that, you get it, you love it, you love catching, but then now you got to be good at communicating that through typing a police report, because somebody else is going to be reading that report that's going to authorize the charges down the road. So it's, people just think they go out and write tickets and do this. I'm like, in fatal car crashes, there's a multitude of things, of measurements and photographs, the computer regeneration of the scene, because it's going to be a part of civil lawsuits down the road, and, in criminal cases. So it's, like I said, when you go in and work, you could be, on a call for 2-3 hours, and then you're done. You could have 2-3 hours of paperwork, just off that one thing of clearing that off it. So like I said, you can kind of tell, like, if somebody's, I don't know, I struggle, like, if common sense, when you have a conversation with somebody with 15 minutes and, hey, talk to me, like plenty of police interviews, it wasn't ask you to find questions. It's just like, let's see how you communicate. And one of my first interviews, the guy's like, we're not even going to talk law enforcement. Yeah. Tell me about yourself. Let's see how well you communicate, and have a 30-minute conversation of, tell me about you, your family, this, that, and the other. And then if they decided off that they liked you, and then you went on to a formal interview where it was more law enforcement specific.
So, I get it. It's sometimes you just got to read the room, and like, just knowing you're very funny, but I know you're very serious too. And I would think your style, your your personality, you're good at keeping people calm and just kind of like making them laugh or making them smile. I would think that was probably utilized often in your career of just like, maybe people are intimidated and freaked out and you just got to calm the situation down. When you see younger people coming through, like what typically are the traits? Like you just went over a few. What are some of the traits that you think make a good police officer other than, I would think restraint, like the ability to not act out when you get triggered. What are a few things that you like think about, like that maybe somebody's listening and they're like, I wonder if I have these?
How you react in a stressful situation. I mean, I always give the analogy, okay, you add a little bit of pressure to someone, and let's use this one where you go and see a late night horror movie at the movie theater, and it was packed when you got there and the car's parked way out, and then you have that key in your hand and you get out to your key and then your just mind's racing. And you just think you've done it 100 times to put that key in the lock and unlock the door before the key fobs, and you struggle to do it. So, I mean, it's one of those asking them scenarios. And I mean, my dad had a great scenario where he'd ask it in the interview processes, and it was just a cop. You walk in a gas station at 2 a.m. and you're sitting there and you have a cup of coffee in your gun hand, and you walked in the middle of an armed robbery. And the guy's got a gun pointed at you with a hostage in front of him. What are you going to do? He says, give me your gun. And my dad's like, there was no right or wrong answer. He just wanted to see if you could make a quick decision and then justify it, because a lot of these decisions are made, like you said, he was just going in to have a cup of coffee and relax and happened to walk in the middle of a significant thing. And it's interview questions like that of how are you wishy-washy? Are you say, I don't give up my gun, and then he just killed the hostage, or if you gave up your gun, way to go. Now you just got yourself and the hostage killed, and it's just one of those interview things where that's in the course of these interviews where it may get a little bit uncomfortable, but they need to know how you react in a little bit more of a stressful situation, because it's kind of like doing the simunition training, or the FATS training where you get the video screen.
Yep.
If you're just doing that, shooting the laser thing, but some agencies utilize, put a taser to your lower back. And if you get shot, it tases you just to give you an added nervousness, heightened, simunition. When we do simunition training, when you get shot and you're wearing gear, it hurts, but it's just one of those things to make it the most realistic without, actually using real bullets. So,
yeah, I remember coming out, seeing you in Kalamazoo, and I would often beat you up, put you in a headlock. And I remember you
don't forget eating grass. You made me eat grass a lot.
Yeah, you kind of freaked out, but then you got better at handling those situations where you didn't, get all crazy. So I saw growth in you back in the olden days. That must have been hard though, when a younger cousin comes out from the West Coast. And anyways, so how does it work, or how does it feel? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. Obviously there's been a lot of negative publicity around police officers and defunding, and I'm not even a cop, but I get pissed off, and I try to see both sides, but like you being a police officer for so long, that's got to be difficult. Just the whole, and I don't want to get too political here, but how you've been removed for 4 or 5 years, but this must be kind of difficult to see and hear about, all these things that they're doing. And, I mean, at the end of the day, good police officers, just like a good doctor or whatever, is life-saving, and they should be honored and celebrated. And I feel like it's the opposite. And I know there's some bad people, but like, how does that feel being an ex-police officer? Does that piss you off? Do you have a different perspective on that?
Oh, greatly. Because 90% of the 95, you don't see the good, officers very seldom on the local news of the heroic acts of law enforcement that, they're the ones running into the buildings as everybody's running out, and they may be running in one person, when you're trained running in with 4 active shooters, and they're ones. And it's just one of those that people get, and you hear this thing, oh, they need to be better trained. Well, you got to remember, the amount of training officers already have, from de-escalation, firearms, to first aid, to rapid deployment, to, all these trainings. I go, an officer would never be on the street if they were experts in every single facet of what they get, and how they look when it comes to a critical incident, and granted, there are ones that, like I said, I've watched, and it's unfortunate, but there's bad seeds in every profession. And unfortunately, it just got glamorized a little bit too much here, and people turn, and what's happening now in these cities, you can look at any major city that has, I know at times I want to say they care more for the criminal than they do the police, and they're running at a critical low level of staffing. So, and in law enforcement, it's one of those things that when they're short, they have a thing, that you can be ordered in. So your shift could be ending. Say, no, we're ordering you to stay, or we're ordering you in tomorrow, depending on your collective bargaining agreement. But these shortages and the stuff, like my dad, when he was a cop, you broke the law, you went to jail. It was one of those that I've got the philosophy that you steal a 2-cent piece of bazooka bubble gum the first time. Yeah, it should be just talk to your parents. But Billy, that's not nice. Billy steals that same 2-cent piece of gum. Billy, I told you, I'm going to write you this ticket now. And then he steals it again. Billy, hey, it's the principle.
Yeah.
You just have to have law and order, or you just see how cities deteriorate the thing. But it does. I don't watch much news anymore, because it's just one of those that, hey, I'm retired. Yeah. And in my second profession, I see enough of it, working as a business agent for the Fraternal Order of Police. So
right.
It's just, I'm glad I'm out of the industry, put it that way.
Yeah. So, that's an honest response. So if someone's interested in getting into it, they just need to be cognitive, aware of what the political landscape and some of the issues, which very well could go away. Some things happen, like it's craziness right now, but in 5-10 years, it could be totally different too. Right.
Absolutely. And I go, like, in my sheriff's department, I retired. They don't buy into the politics, I represent officers when they're in trouble, and I go, when they screw up, nowadays everything's on camera, everything's recorded. So, say the video doesn't lie. But and also in the same aspect, use of force for police, how you're trained, they always get this where sometimes use of force doesn't look good on camera. Okay. So, but I'm like, you're trained just like our firing range. We shoot to center mass. We don't shoot to kill. We shoot to stop the threat. And then you have people say, well, can't you shoot an arm or a leg? But like, well, the reason I shoot center mass is I'm already in a heightened sense of nervousness or whatever I'm involved in. Now I'm responsible for the backdrop. So I try to shoot for the smallest part on a person's body, and I'm responsible for that bullet that goes down a half a mile and hits an innocent person sitting there. So we don't shoot to kill, we shoot to stop the threat. And in use of force things like a baton strike, I was trained, you hit them 110, when you pull that out, 110%, because they're actually less likely to sustain injury, versus you hit them 8-9 times at 40%, And so they say use of, it doesn't look pretty, but that's how they were trained, because in the scheme of things, the officer needs to go home at night. So,
Yep, I get it. I also think it'd be interesting, just like, what was it like freedom, your ability to, life work balance? Like, did you miss birthdays at night or holidays? Do you remember having, you have kids? Do you remember having to leave things that you didn't wish you, I mean, or did you have control of your schedule?
Oh no, see, it's one thing in law enforcement that you're a 24/7 operation, 365. So it's not like, you know, Yonkers is open, these business hours, like we're 24/7. And you may plan on, if you get into the career, you're low seniority, and low seniority is typically the late night shifts, where a lot of shifts now are going to or police departments to the, 12-hour shifts. But you're working 6P. So like our schedule right now, you work Monday, Tuesday, 12 hours, you're off Wednesday, Thursday. Then you work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 12-hour shifts. And then the next week it flops. You're off Monday, Tuesday, work Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's one of those things that if you're on road patrol, you're working Christmas. I mean, there are some days, that you're heading in on Christmas, day, Christmas Eve, heading into work. And until everybody puts their time in the trenches. And if you get to a specialty division, say the Detective Bureau or some of these others, and then you may be working more of a weekday schedule, a Monday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts, type thing. But it's just one of those things that you just put your time in, and your time will come soon enough that you'll have those same opportunities as, anyone else.
So like when you're deep in it, did you have the ability to go away for, like, what was your vacation per year? Could you go away for 2 weeks, a year, a month, 3 weeks? Like,
yeah, depending on your vacation thing, we have our shift bids that you put your vacation bids in, say November for the entire next year. So if you had a big trip, I could take, depending on how many weeks of vacation you have, like when you first start off, you're going to be front loaded, 40 hours for the first year. And then at 20 years, you're going to have 200 hours, per year. And it goes by seniority. So the more vacation you get, the more seniority. So if you have those big trips, and then there are some times where they let you do shift trades where, hey, I need tomorrow off, and you're opposite letter me. How about you work for me, and then I'll work for you that day? And they allow us to do that too. So they really try to work with you. Then, if there's something, a big thing that you need, most places will find a way to make sure you're there. If it's something, your kid's graduation or something like that, there's ways around it.
Okay. So as we wind this down, is there anything I haven't asked that I should have, like anything that you think would be really important for somebody who's considering your line of work to know?
Like it's a rewarding career. You go in and I was never, I wrote maybe one ticket a year. And if it was an attitude ticket, but if I stopped you and you apologize, it's like, I always treat it like there's plenty of people I'd arrest. And by the time we're getting to the jail, I'm just having a conversation with them, and we're sitting there. And as I'm booking them in, we're just talking like two old high school buddies sitting there. And, I try to sell it to them that, hey, everybody makes mistakes, but I'm not going to sit here and rub it in your face, and sit here. And it's just one of those that you fall on that tutelage that, treat others how you'd want to be treated. So I was just always, I worked in the jail for 2 years up here at Kent County while I was still down in Van Buren. So I worked maximum security. So, we'd be out, my wife and I'd be downtown Grand Rapids, and everybody called me Junior. And it was one of those that Jan's like, who's that? And I'm like, listen, if anybody refers to me as Junior, they were an inmate at the Kent County Jail, because that was my nickname, because I looked like I was 12 when I started. So, but it was one of those, people are, don't you worry? I'm like, no, I always treated people decent, and it's like, there's times if you want to, tell the one, there was this inmate that was just a dick and nonstop. And so after lockdown, I called him.
Do you mean his name was Richard?
Yeah, it was Richard.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it was Richard. But he turned around, I pulled him out late night, and I just, he just kept, and I told him, I said, listen, you don't shut your trap, everybody on the cell block's going to know the real reason you're in here. And he was in there for child molester. Two things that, everybody in jail has. They all have kids, they all have a mom. So two don't make fun of someone's mom. Don't say, child molesters, they don't do well. So it was one of those. But from that point on, hey, Officer Nevelle, hey, how you doing? Same old smile. Nobody else needed to know it, but he just needed a little bit more encouragement. So,
yeah, I mean, if you're black and white, like very rigid, I would think that would be a challenging career. But like you're like I said, you're funny. I mean, I think that really would help aid you. Did help aid you in your career. Because like at the end of the day, these are people, these are humans, and maybe they messed up. Maybe they didn't have the advantages some of us did, but they're still humans and they need to be treated, even if they've done terrible things. So I have a feeling that's something that you leveraged a lot. If one of the questions I ask every guest is, two questions. One is, if you were to rewind the clock, and by the way, you came out of high school. Where did you go to college?
Kalamazoo Valley Community College.
Okay,
so I graduated my associate's degree. Yeah.
Okay, so if you came back out of there now, knowing like everything you know about the police officer career, would you do it differently, or do you think you would follow the same route?
These day and ages, I probably go a different route. That it may not be. If anything, it would be more of a, like you get out in the sheriff's department, but just too many overseers in some of these cities, and I represent parts of Grand Rapids Command, and just the amount of people they allow for politics reasons, because I mean, nobody's harder on police than their own agency. Like there's no covering up. There is nothing. I have represented plenty of officers that got been terminated, over a bad decision, split-second decision. And it's just one of those that, I mean, it's tough because, I mean, I just represented someone that was a fantastic cop, made a really poor decision, one decision, boom, out of a job, and it's just one of those that, I mean, if you go into it you have to go into it these day and ages with the mindset that everything you say and do is recorded, because there are body cams now, there's dash cams, everything is. So, I mean, if you just keep that in the back of your mind, where back when my dad was a cop, there was no such thing as a body camera or any of that stuff. And I go if you go through it with that mindset, just, hey, just remember, everything you say and do is recorded. And how's that going to play out when I'm sitting in the sheriff's office, in a week if they file a complaint on me?
No,
so
this is good stuff. I mean, this is people need to listen. Like, they really need to understand beyond what being a cop is about. But you have to understand all the stuff that comes with it, and that's really what I try to get into. So, if you had to choose a different career, like, is there a dream job? And I mean like Fantasyland, like, raise the bar. Like, is there something you would love to do? And I ask all my guests this, and it's sometimes pretty interesting. Sometimes they give me the safe response and say, I'm doing my dream job. But if you could do anything, is there a job out there that you would love to do?
Yeah. When I set my mind to it, maybe back in the day, like, so me and my buddy went to go in the Marine Corps we wanted to be killers, we're going in the Marine Corps. And then after that, I was like, thought it through. And then once I put my mind to it, and then going through all the schools and the training and that stuff, it just intrigued me that, like you said, it was never, I mean, I worked 9 hours a day, drove home, showered, and I had about a 40-minute drive to school, and classes were 3.5 hours Monday through Thursday. So I wasn't getting back home till 11 o'clock at night, but it was just one of those that I thoroughly enjoyed it. My first 5 years of work, and like you said, and I worked 7 days a week because I was working up here at the sheriff's department and down at the police department. But I never was like, I have to go into work. It was just part of the thing. You went into work. So I'm like, I really didn't aspire to be much, really, because I was like, it was my comfortable decision. I knew my dad. I had spent plenty of time in his cruiser. And then the more I got into it, the more it just intrigued me because I just tend to think I'm fairly quick savvy at the time, and it just, I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
You're savvy for Michigan, but like West Coast savvy. Now, I think you bring up a good point because like I've known you, like you really love the simple things, like, hanging out with family, going on trips.
Cold beer and my dog golden retrievers.
Yeah, like hanging out with your dogs, drinking beer. I think that's what the secret of life is just kind of the simple stuff. So I wasn't thinking you would have some elaborate thing, but like you've always seemed like you've enjoyed, from the time I've known you, enjoyed what you've done, and seems like you're really enjoying it now. I appreciate your time. I was excited to have you on as family, but also again, someone I haven't had any police officers on, and hoping that people that are watching this got a really realistic idea of what the lifestyle is like. And I guess the lesson is be prepared for multiple eyes, lots of people watching. Make sure that, you cover your, because it seems like a very in the spotlight type of career. And I don't know, I'll be the honest, my take on that, Glenn, is like, we all are human and we all aren't always perfect and we always make mistakes. So I would think it would be extremely difficult to be a police officer right now because, we're not always batting 100 or 1,000. So anyways, good job. You made it through. You did a great job. I know you supported your family and you still look pretty good.
Thanks, cousin.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks.